What if abundance isn't actually about how much money you have? This week I've had less money available than I'd ideally like, and somehow I've also felt more abundant. We've swam, explored, found new places, spent entire days out, met people, been given food, been given little treats, found free activities, and it made me realise something. Maybe abundance isn't having enough money to buy everything you want. Maybe sometimes it's trusting that you can have less money and still have a really full life. Welcome back to the Wildlife Way. If you're new here, I'm Danielle. I'm a mum to my little boy Lucas, and we travel with our 2 dogs in our van. This channel is really just about us figuring out what it means to build a life differently. Motherhood, van life, nature, spirituality, healing, freedom, and all the messy bits in between. And this week has taught me something I thought I already knew, but there's a massive difference between understanding something intellectually and actually living it. So what actually happened this week? I was running low on money and diesel, and normally when that happens I panic. I start thinking, right, we need to start making our way home. And I think that's interesting in itself, because home becomes this place where I almost put life on pause again until I get paid. Or sometimes I do the complete opposite. I get anxious about not having enough, spend it anyway, almost as a way of avoiding that feeling, and then end up with even less. But this time I did something different. I stayed, not recklessly. I wasn't pretending money didn't matter or spending money I didn't have. I actually became more responsible with it. But I didn't stop living, and that's been a massive distinction for me. What's the difference between being responsible and living in lack? I think I'm finally starting to understand this. Being responsible can look like, I don't need that, so I'm not buying it. Lack feels more like, I can't have that, we don't do anything, I don't have enough, I need to go home, everything has to stop. The behaviour can almost look identical from the outside. You're not spending the money, but internally it feels completely different. And I've noticed that massively this week. I was going to take Lucas swimming. There was a pool with a slide and I thought he'd absolutely love it. But when I looked at how much money I had, how much diesel I needed to make last, how much time it would actually take to get to this place, I thought, no, it's probably not sensible. Normally that would have disappointed me. I would have felt like I can't even take my child swimming. Or I might have just paid for it anyway and worried about the consequences afterwards. Instead, I thought, okay, we're not going to do that, and just carried on with the day. We went to the park twice, we had a lovely time. Later I decided to move the van because we needed water anyway. We stopped at the shop instead of going where we originally planned. Lucas was saying hello to absolutely everybody and apparently making his personal mission to brighten up the entire shop. Then we drove towards this forest. It turned out to be somewhere we'd actually been before. There was no signal, the ground was really uneven, and there'd been a forest fire nearby, so everything smelt of burning. I thought, nope. So we left. By this point it was getting late, and it was around Lucas's bedtime. I was getting stressed and I didn't really know where we were going. Eventually I found this random pull-in. I thought, oh, we'll just stay here for the night. And then I realised what we'd parked beside was an outdoor swimming pool with a park, a massive field, areas where dogs were allowed, and the pool was donation based. I genuinely couldn't believe it. The exact thing I decided I couldn't responsibly pay for that day had basically appeared beside the van. So did we go swimming that next day? Of course we bloody did. I donated the £3 in cash I already had laying around in the van, and we stayed from about 10:30 until 4. Lucas had the best day. He went swimming, played in the park, made loads of friends. There was a little girl there with a bike with stabilisers, and she let him have a go. Her granddad was helping to push him around and he absolutely loved it. There were older girls who kept coming over to us, other children with footballs and water guns. The dogs were allowed to stay beside us on the grass. Someone had bought too many chips for their children and gave us a whole box for free. And then, because apparently I have absolutely no shame anymore, I asked the lifeguard if he'd fill up our 20-litre water tanks, and he did. So we arrived needing water and wanting swimming, and somehow left having had the entire day out, swimming, food, water, friends, and experiences for Lucas, all for £3. That's abundance. Not because £3 suddenly became £100, but because what we actually received was worth so much more than what we spent. And then it happened again. The next morning, Lucas wanted to go to the park. We started walking and spotted a walkway, so I thought we'd explore that first and then go to the park on the way back. The walkway led us to another park, so he played there. Then we really fancied Maltesers. Normally I'd buy one of those massive bags, but I was conscious of money, so I thought we'd just get a little bag of them to share. While I was paying, Lucas suddenly goes, "Ooh, lollies." He loves lollies. I deliberately not bought them with the shopping because they were about £3 and I thought, well, we don't need them. And to be completely honest, I think Lucas has plenty of lollies, probably too many of them. So the man behind the counter goes, "Oh, do you like lollies? Here you go." I was genuinely confused. I actually asked him how much they were, and he went, for free. So Lucas walked back to the van, having had 2 parks, a walk, Maltesers, and his free lolly. Nothing about that morning was lacking. And then there was the swimming again. This is where it started to get ridiculous. That morning, Lucas had asked to go swimming again. Later, I realised we were parked beside a leisure centre, so I went online to see how much the swimming was. It turned out that particular leisure centre doesn't even have a pool, but while I was looking, I discovered that 8 leisure centres across the county were all offering free family swimming sessions throughout the summer holidays, all on different days. And there was one 10 minutes away from us, beside a park and a field, so Lucas could get his swimming. He gets the park, the dogs got their field, and I get to sit underneath the trees. And there are free swimming sessions available over the next few days. At that point, I'm like, okay, universe, I get it. So could it be just a coincidence? Of course, somebody could call it coincidence, and that's fine. But I've been working on my beliefs around abundance for quite a while. I've understood the idea that abundance isn't only money. I've talked about trusting. I've worked on noticing where I'm operating from fear and scarcity. But recently, it feels like I'm not just thinking about it anymore. I'm experiencing it. And it's happened enough times, close enough together, that for me personally, it's become almost impossible to ignore. You might call that coincidence, but I call it alignment. I actually think there's something valuable here regardless of what you believe spiritually, because I also changed my behaviour. I didn't sit inside the van waiting for something magical to happen. I went out into life, I walked, I explored, I changed plans, I spoke to people, I looked for things, I followed little impulses. Because I wasn't so fixated on what I couldn't afford, I was available to notice what was actually around me. Maybe that's part of how abundance works. This isn't me saying that I don't think money matters. And this is the important part. I still need money. I need diesel and food. I have bills. I have a van to pay for. And I've got absolutely loads of things to do for the conversion. There are things I want to build that actually cost money. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, just trust the universe and your diesel tank will magically fill itself." That's not what I'm learning. I'm learning that money isn't the only resource available to me. And having limited money doesn't automatically mean having a limited life. That's completely different. I think money used to represent safety for me. So when it started getting low, my nervous system didn't just register, "We need to spend carefully." It registered danger, go home, stop, don't do anything, or escape the anxiety by spending anyway. And then I'd end up proving my own fear correct because I'd have nothing left. This time I had to sit inside the discomfort and behave differently. I'm not spending recklessly, but I'm also not retreating. I'm saying, okay, this is what we have, how can we live within it? And strangely, life hasn't become smaller. This has taught me that giving Lucas a rich childhood and spending lots of money are absolutely not the same thing. And I think I've known that for a while. But this lifestyle keeps showing it to me. Think about that one day. Swimming, a park, dogs, friends, a bike, someone's granddad helping him learn to ride, sharing chips, running around outside for hours. He missed his nap because he was having so much fun. Then I paid for it for approximately 17 years at bedtime. But that is childhood. He's not measuring the momentary value of his day. He's experiencing it. And that's what I want to give him. Not necessarily everything, but a life that he gets to participate in. This has changed how I feel about van life massively, because this is one of the things I couldn't really explain when I was trying to decide whether I wanted the house or the van. It's not just the van, it's how we live when we're in it. We're outside, we're walking, we're discovering things. We're talking to people and plans change constantly. One place doesn't work, so we move somewhere else and discover something we would never have found otherwise. There's a kind of participation with life that I wouldn't feel in the same way when I'm sitting at home. And I think that's part of why I keep coming alive again when we're traveling. This isn't to say I'm no longer worried about money. I'm still human. I still don't know exactly how quickly I'm going to afford everything I want to do in the van. There are still financial decisions to make. There are still moments when my brain goes, what the hell are we doing? The difference is that I'm starting to recognize fear without automatically letting it make the decision. And maybe that's what I've been learning through this entire journey. Not how to create a life where uncertainty disappears, but how to live without needing certainty before I allow myself to move. Abundance means something completely different to me now. I think I used to believe that abundance meant having enough money, that I would never have to worry about not having enough. Now I think abundance is much bigger than that. It's money, yes, but it's also time and freedom, nature, community, generosity, opportunity, someone giving your child a lolly and someone sharing their chips. Finding a swimming pool when you couldn't afford the swimming pool you originally planned. Discovering free activities because one plan didn't work, having somewhere beautiful to wake up, having enough, and sometimes having more than enough in forms you weren't expecting. Maybe abundance isn't always about getting more. Maybe it's also about becoming able to see how much is already trying to reach you. I think that's what the Wildlight Way is becoming for me. Not me standing here pretending I figured life out, because I absolutely haven't. It's me questioning the things I was taught a life was supposed to look like: success, security, motherhood, money, home, freedom, and then actually going out and experimenting with another way of living. So if you're figuring any of that out too, subscribe and come along with us, because apparently right now we're following free swimming pools, random forest paths, unexpected lollies, and whatever else life decides to throw at us. And I'll leave you with the question I've been asking myself this week. What if abundance isn't measured by how much you have, but by how much of life you're actually available to receive? I'll see you in the next one. Welcome to the Wildlight Way.